moment she was born, someone pointed a camera at her, and it never turned off. Before Brooke Shields could even walk, the world was already watching. Her face, angelic, haunting, unforgettable, was printed on billboards, magazines, and cereal boxes. She wasn't just a child star. She was a commodity, sold to America as the picture of innocence, even when innocence was the first thing stolen from her. It's hard to imagine now one of the world's most beautiful women, once just a baby in the middle of a war between fame, greed, and a mother's obsession. Her father, a wealthy socialite, tried to pay her mother to end the pregnancy. Her mother took the money and defied him. From that moment on, Brooke's existence was a rebellion. By 11 months, she was modeling. By 10, she was posing in artistic photos that blurred every moral line. At 11, she was cast as a child prostitute in Pretty Baby, a role so shocking it made headlines around the world. Some called it art, others called it exploitation. But either way, it made her famous and her mother rich. Every flash of the camera brought applause, and another piece of Brooke disappeared. The world saw glamour. Behind the lights, there was control, pressure, and a little girl screaming silently beneath layers of makeup and fame. This isn't just a story about Hollywood. It's a story about what happens when the world turns a child into a symbol and then refuses to let her grow up. Because Brooke Shields didn't choose the spotlight. She was born inside it, and the photos that made her famous are the same ones that nearly destroyed her. Before she ever smiled for a camera, her life was already a script of conflict, money, and manipulation. Brooke Shields entered the world on May 31st, 1965 in Manhattan, an infant caught between privilege and chaos. Her father, Francis Alexander Shields, was a charming Princeton graduate from an elite family line, linked to aristocracy and wealth. Her mother, Terry, was a struggling actress with fire in her eyes and demons in her veins. Their love story began with glamour, but ended in courtroom bitterness before Brooke could even crawl. When Terry discovered she was pregnant, Francis panicked. He wasn't ready to be tied down. Rumors swirled that he offered her money to end the pregnancy, an attempt to erase a scandal before it began. But Terry, stubborn and defiant, took the cash and chose the child. That single act of rebellion would define both of their lives. 5 months after Brooke's birth, the marriage imploded. Francis drifted away, building a new life, while Terry clutched her baby like a lifeline. Alone, unstable, and fueled by resentment, she began to see Brooke not as a daughter, but as a destiny. Nurses at the hospital remembered her whispering, "She's going to be famous one day." Terry surrounded the baby with mirrors, cameras, and rehearsed smiles. She wasn't raising a child. She was building a product. Every coup, every movement was observed, shaped, and perfected. Brooke became the vessel through which Terry sought validation from a world that had ignored her. What began as maternal pride evolved into obsession, a dangerous cocktail of ambition and control that would follow Brooke for decades. Because in Terry's mind, her daughter wasn't just Brooke, she was the second chance the world owed her. While other children learned how to play, Brooke Shields was learning how to perform. There was no playground in Brooke's childhood, only studio lights and stage directions. From the moment she could stand, her mother, Terry, treated life like an endless audition. Piano lessons before breakfast, ballet classes after lunch, horseback riding by sunset. Every movement rehearsed, every smile corrected. Terry's voice echoed through their small Manhattan apartment. "Posture, Brooke. The camera loves perfection." By just 11 months old, she landed her first modeling job for Ivory Soap. The image, soft, glowing, angelic, made her a marketing sensation overnight. To advertisers, she was the embodiment of purity. To Terry, proof that her instincts were right. Soon came the Band-Aid campaigns, Colgate commercials, and a flood of endorsement deals. Brooke wasn't learning to talk. She was learning to sell. The line between mother and manager blurred quickly. Terry micromanaged every detail, from wardrobe to facial expressions. Brooke's childhood toys were replaced with makeup kits and photo portfolios. Birthdays weren't for cake, they were for casting calls. The compliments from adults masked a quiet tragedy, a little girl being taught that love depended on applause. At age 11, she took her first acting role in the horror film Alice, Sweet Alice. In the movie, her character is strangled to death during a church ceremony, a chilling foreshadowing of the emotional suffocation she was living in real life. The on-screen funeral became symbolic of something much deeper, the burial of her innocence. Behind the scenes, Terry beamed at reporters, sipping champagne while her daughter rehearsed crying scenes. Fame was no longer the goal, it was the family business. Brooke was both product and profit, expected to smile on command, even when she was exhausted or frightened. By the time most children were discovering who they were, Brooke had already been told exactly what to be. The cameras made her famous, but they also built the cage she couldn't escape. After Pretty Baby's shocking success, Hollywood couldn't get enough of Brooke Shields. She was labeled the most beautiful girl in the world. her image plastered on every magazine rack from New York to Tokyo. But that praise came with an unsettling obsession. People didn't just admire her, they wanted to own her. Photographers followed her to school, reporters questioned her about adult topics, and advertisers pushed her into campaigns that walked the edge of decency. At 12, she was modeling in tight jeans for Calvin Klein, whispering the now infamous line, "You want to know what comes between me and my Calvins? Nothing." The commercial exploded across television screens, its seductive tone igniting outrage and fascination in equal measure. Parents complained, sales soared. Behind the controversy, a little girl was learning that shock sold better than innocence. Terry, ever the strategist, brushed off criticism. "It's just advertising," she told reporters. But each deal pushed Brooke further into an image she didn't control. What was meant to be empowerment became exposure. Her name intertwined with controversy before she even hit high school. Every new project had to be bolder, riskier, more profitable. The public saw glamour. Brooke saw a script she couldn't rewrite. Privately, she struggled to understand why adults around her blurred boundaries so easily, why her childhood was treated as marketing material, why no one asked how she felt about the stories being told with her face. The world praised her composure, unaware it was armor built from confusion and compliance. The It Girl label glittered on the surface, but it hid a darker truth. Brooke wasn't living a dream, she was performing one for everyone else. And just as the spotlight grew brighter, so did the shadows behind it. By 16, she wasn't just famous, she was an empire built on contradiction. As Brooke Shields entered her teenage years, she was no longer the curious child being guided by adults. She had become the industry's golden commodity. Magazine covers labeled her America's sweetheart, but the film roles told another story entirely. Hollywood couldn't decide if she was a girl to protect or a woman to desire, so it sold both versions at once. Brooke stood at the center of that confusion, smiling for cameras that never stopped clicking. In 1980, The Blue Lagoon premiered, and controversy erupted all over again. Brooke, then 14, portrayed a shipwrecked girl discovering love and sexuality on a deserted island. The film was marketed as innocent adventure, but audiences saw something far more provocative. Scenes featuring her sun-kissed skin and implied nudity made headlines, though the production insisted she was covered by body doubles and careful editing. None of that mattered. The fantasy had already been sold. Critics attacked the film for blurring moral lines, but ticket sales soared. The teenage Brooke became a global fixation. Too young for adult roles, yet too famous for child ones. Endless interviews focused on her virginity, not her talent. Talk show hosts asked questions no minor should ever have to answer. And through it all, her mother stood proudly beside her, calling it empowerment. The pattern continued with Endless Love in 1981, another romance steeped in controversy, where passion replaced plot and innocence became spectacle. Brooke was earning millions, yet losing pieces of herself with every script. Behind the fame was a teenager craving normalcy, someone who wanted to go to school dances without flashbulbs or judgment. Hollywood had built its fantasy around her, but it didn't see Brooke Shields the person, only Brooke Shields the symbol. After a decade of living under a camera lens, Brooke Shields did the unthinkable. She disappeared. By the time she turned 18, Brooke had seen more photo shoots, interviews, and scandals than most stars experience in a lifetime. Yet behind the glamour, she was exhausted, mentally, emotionally, spiritually. Hollywood had turned her into a myth, but she was still a teenager trying to figure out who she really was. So in 1983, she made a choice that stunned the world. She traded red carpets for textbooks and enrolled at Princeton University. The decision was more than rebellion. It was survival. Brooke wanted to reclaim her mind, to become something beyond the image the media had sculpted. But fame, like a shadow, followed her everywhere. Reporters camped outside her dorm. Strangers sent letters and flowers to her mailbox. A student even tried to photograph her while she showered, selling the image to tabloids for thousands of dollars. Privacy, it seemed, was a luxury she would never afford. Still, college gave her something Hollywood never could control. She studied French literature, surrounded herself with classmates who saw her not as a celebrity, but as a person with thoughts and feelings. She attended lectures, joined campus groups, and even dared to walk across campus without makeup, small acts of rebellion that felt revolutionary after years of living under perfection's microscope. But the past has a way of clawing back. One obsessed fan began stalking her, sending notes and waiting outside her classes. The incident ended with police involvement and a short jail sentence for the man. But the fear lingered. Even away from the spotlight, Brooke couldn't escape being watched. Her years at Princeton taught her something powerful, that silence and solitude could be healing, yet the world wasn't ready to let her fade. When she came back to Hollywood, she expected a new beginning. Instead, she found a nightmare she couldn't speak about for decades. After graduating from Princeton, Brooke Shields returned to Los Angeles, determined to rebuild her acting career on her own terms. She was older, educated, and finally free from her mother's constant control, or so she thought. What awaited her wasn't opportunity, but a brutal reminder that the power dynamic she had escaped as a child still ruled the industry she grew up in. One night, she accepted what she believed was a professional dinner with a powerful Hollywood executive who had promised her a major role. The meeting began in a restaurant, polite and businesslike, but when he suggested they continue their discussion in his hotel suite, Brooke's instincts warned her something was off. Still, she followed, afraid to appear ungrateful or naive. Inside, everything changed. The door locked, the charm vanished. What happened next was an assault that shattered her trust in every smiling face she'd met in the industry. Brooke froze, her mind separating from her body, her voice trapped in her throat. When it was over, she left in silence, numb, convinced no one would believe her. After all, she was Brooke Shields, the girl who had been sexualized since childhood. Who would think she hadn't invited it? For years, she buried the memory, pretending it never happened. She went to auditions, smiled for cameras, played the part of a woman in control, but inside, the wound festered. It wasn't until decades later, in her Pretty Baby, Brooke Shields' documentary, that she spoke the truth. Her voice trembled, but her eyes didn't waver. "I didn't fight because I had learned not to make people uncomfortable." Her confession wasn't just a revelation, it was a reckoning. The child star who had once been silenced by fame had finally taken her voice back. She had survived fame and silence, but real freedom would come only when she learned how to love on her own terms. In her 20s, Brooke Shields stepped into adulthood carrying invisible scars. She had conquered Hollywood, but never learned what it meant to simply be loved. Every relationship felt like a negotiation between who she truly was and who the world expected her to be. Her first serious romance began at Princeton with football star Dean Cain, a classmate who saw her not as an icon but as a person. With him, Brooke experienced something entirely new: safety. Yet even that love came with the ghost of her mother's voice whispering caution. Terry still controlled her life, warning that intimacy could ruin her image. It took Brooke years to trust that love didn't have to come with shame. After college, she married tennis legend Andre Agassi, a match that fascinated tabloids. Their relationship burned bright and fast, a mixture of passion, pressure, and deep emotional need. Behind closed doors, the glamour cracked. Agassi's temper, fueled by insecurity and secret substance abuse, left Brooke walking on eggshells. During a Friends cameo, when she filmed a comedic kiss with Matt LeBlanc, Andre erupted, destroying his tennis trophies in rage. It was the breaking point. Their marriage, like so many of Brooke's performances, had been built for the cameras, not for peace. When the divorce papers were signed in 1999, she expected to feel broken. Instead, she felt free. And not long after, fate intervened in the most ordinary way. She lost her dog while filming Suddenly Susan, and the man who returned it, screenwriter Chris Henchy, became her future husband. With him, Brooke found something she'd never known: stability without control. He didn't need her fame. He loved her silence, her humor, her humanity. For the first time, she could exhale. The little girl who had spent her life performing finally found someone who didn't want to show. The world saw a smiling mother. Behind closed doors, she couldn't even recognize herself. After years of heartbreak and reinvention, Brooke Shields finally seemed to have it all: a loving husband, a successful career, and the promise of motherhood. But when that dream turned into a nightmare, she discovered that even the strongest survivor could fall apart. Before giving birth to her first child, she suffered a devastating miscarriage that left her questioning her body and her purpose. When she finally welcomed her daughter Rowan in 2003, joy should have followed. Instead, a dark fog crept in. Brooke felt detached, robotic, unable to bond with her baby. She would stare at the crib and feel nothing but guilt. Friends congratulated her on motherhood, unaware she was quietly falling apart. Nights turned into silent battles, tears hidden behind closed doors, smiles forced for cameras. "I wanted to disappear," she later confessed. "I loved my child, but I couldn't feel it." What she didn't know then was that she was suffering from severe postpartum depression. Her vulnerability became public when she released her memoir, Down Came the Rain. In it, she laid bare the terrifying thoughts that haunted her: despair, isolation, even moments of wanting to stop existing. Instead of compassion, she faced a public attack from an unlikely critic, Tom Cruise. The actor publicly condemned her use of antidepressants, calling them wrong, and accusing her of weakness. The confrontation ignited a national debate on mental health and medication, placing Brooke's pain under another spotlight she never asked for. But she didn't crumble. Instead, she turned the scrutiny into strength. Her honesty inspired countless women to seek help and speak up about their own struggles. When Tom Cruise later apologized privately, she accepted it, but she never forgot how it felt to be judged for surviving. Through therapy, love, and sheer determination, Brooke found her way back to herself. The woman who once defined beauty now redefined resilience. After a lifetime of being seen, Brooke Shields finally learned how to live on her own terms. Today, Brooke Shields stands not as a product of Hollywood, but as a woman who survived it. The world that once defined her by beauty and scandal now sees her for her strength. From child exploitation and family chaos to love, loss, and rediscovery, Brooke's journey has become a symbol of endurance, proof that even the most photographed girl in the world could reclaim her own reflection. She turned every painful headline into purpose. She used every scar as a story. And through it all, she never stopped evolving. From the exploited child to the fearless advocate, her voice, once silenced by fame, now echoes for every young girl told to smile when she wants to scream. Brooke doesn't chase the spotlight anymore, she controls it. Because in the end, fame didn't define her, survival did. If you've been captivated by Brooke's untold story, don't stop here. In our previous deep dive, we explored another timeless icon who faced her own battles behind the glamour, a woman whose strength, grace, and secrets still fascinate generations. You'll uncover intimate moments, hidden heartbreaks, and rare photos that reveal the truth behind the legend. Trust me, it's a story you won't want to miss. Click the video right here to keep binge watching and see how another star's life behind the lens compares to Brooke's journey. And if you're new here, welcome to Vintage Spotlight, where we don't just tell stories, we resurrect the legends. Every week we unveil the real lives behind the world's most glamorous faces, the pain, the passion, and the power that fame tried to hide. Hit subscribe, turn on the bell icon, and keep your seat in the front row of Hollywood's untold history.